My name is Norma Dyson, 28 years old. When I was 13, my older sister Hadley told my parents I stole $2,200 and our grandmother's wedding rings. By midnight, my father had thrown me onto the porch with a duffel bag. My mother stood behind him and said nothing. 15 years later, at the Portsmouth Chamber Awards, I was named Small Business Owner of the Year. My mother walked across that ballroom in a cardigan I recognized from 2010, and she asked me for $500,000. She used the word family 9 times in 2 minutes. What she didn't know was that my aunt had kept a videotape since 2009, and the projector behind us was already on. This is the night I stopped paying for a lie I never told. If you've ever been the kid your family chose not to believe, go ahead and hit subscribe. I'm not asking you to take my side. I'm asking you to stay until the receipts. The ballroom at the Portsmouth Sheraton smelled like rosemary and vodka tonics. 312 guests, 18 years of chamber tradition. The lighting was the warm, flattering kind that makes everyone in the room look kinder than they actually are. I stood near the bar with my Aunt Joanne, who was 64, and wearing a black blazer she had bought at a thrift store on Islington Street earlier that week. She did not adjust the blazer, she did not fidget. She had stopped fidgeting around 1986, she once told me, and she had never picked it back up. I scanned the room out of habit, the way I scan a kitchen before service. Then my eyes stopped at table 9. Cream cardigan. Pilled at the elbows. 15 years old. Joanne did not turn her head. "You see her too," she said. I did not answer. I did not need to. We had been preparing for this for almost 3 weeks, in the careful way 2 people prepare for weather they cannot stop. The chamber gala was invitation only. Donors, board members, business owners with revenue records on file. My mother could not have walked through the door without help. Someone had brought her. Someone had wanted her in this room tonight. Lacey, my sous chef, slipped past with a glass of seltzer and pretended to read the program booklet. Her hair was up. She had cried twice during the rehearsal at 4 that afternoon, and now she looked steady as a kitchen at dawn. "Boss?" she whispered. "There's a press table, 2 reporters, Globe and Seacoast Online. Just so you know." I nodded once. I did not tell Lacey that. That morning, I had asked the AV manager to load a second file onto the projector, marked backup. I did not tell her that there was a DVD inside Joanne's blazer pocket. I did not tell her that the speech in my hand had 3 different endings, and I had not yet decided which one I would deliver. I had told myself I would decide when I saw my mother's face. The seating chart was tucked behind the front of the program. I had checked it twice. Table 9 belonged to Spencer Granger, a hotel chain owner who had become a steady client of mine over the last 18 months. His wife and Hadley moved in the same Boston charity circles. That was how my mother had gotten in. Not on her own credit. On someone else's. 2 of the chairs at table 9 were empty when I scanned. One card in chamber calligraphy read, "Hadley Pruitt +1. The +1 had to be my mother. Hadley would never bring my father in public. He would have ruined the photographs. Joanne's hand settled on my forearm, dry and warm. "Whatever you decide tonight, sweetheart," she said. "I'm in your corner. I always was." Her blazer pocket was rectangular and thin. I knew exactly what was inside. I looked across the room one more time. My mother had finally lifted her gaze from her wine glass. For a second and a half, our eyes met. She did not wave. She did not nod. She lifted her glass to her lips, almost but not quite a toast. My mother had a way of arriving without entering, of being there without taking responsibility for being there. She had perfected it across 4 decades of dinner tables and church basements and parent-teacher conferences. I knew in that second and a half that she had not come to congratulate me. She had come to collect. I grew up in a colonial house on a quiet street in Manchester, New Hampshire. 3 bedrooms upstairs. A finished basement that Hadley used for ballet practice, with a portable bar my father bolted to the wall the year she turned 8. There was also an unfinished half my parents called the storage room. When I turned 6, my mother told me I would be moving down there. "It's just temporary," she said, smoothing a corner of the new throw pillow on her hand. "Hadley needs her own space. She's older. She has recitals. You understand?" I was 6. I did not understand. It became permanent. My sister was the dance kid. Pink slippers at 5, regional medals at 14. 5 small gold figures in 5 wooden frames mounted on the wall above the living room mantel. Each one was lit by a tiny brass picture light. My father installed himself one weekend with a level and a cordless drill. Her name was in calligraphy beneath each plate. Hadley Deason. I remember the first time I noticed how careful the spacing was. I drew. I drew constantly. I filled the back of homework assignments, the margins of library books, the inside covers of every notebook I ever owned. By the time I was 11, I had 53 completed sketches in a Tupperware bin under my basement bed, and not a single one of them was on the wall. "Hadley's our star," my father told dinner guests, smiling around his beer. "Norma's the quiet one." He said it the way you compliment a houseplant. I learned to be invisible. It felt safer than asking for room. My mother forgot to pick me up from school 14 times that I can count. After tutoring, after art club, after a science fair where I placed second in the 7th grade division. Each time, the school secretary called the house, and each time my mother arrived 20 minutes later with the same sentence, dropped lightly through the passenger side window like a coin into a parking meter. I just got tied up with Hadley's recital prep. I stopped expecting. I started walking. The only person in my family who ever called me an artist was my grandmother, Eleanor. She lived 20 minutes away in a small cape with a wraparound porch and a maple tree she had planted in 1968. She kept colored pencils in a tin can on her kitchen table. She drove me to the Portsmouth Public Library every Saturday for years, and she let me check out books she would never have approved of for Hadley. "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee," "The Bell Jar." A biography of Frida Kahlo with paintings on the inside that made me want to be brave. "Sweetheart," she told me when I was 10, sitting at her kitchen table with a sketchbook open between us. "The world has rooms it doesn't know how to label. People like us. We end up in those rooms. That's not a bad thing." I did not understand her then. I would later. In early 2010, my grandmother slipped on the bathroom tile and broke her hip. She did not call my mother. She called Joanne. The hospital kept her for 9 days. I went after school every day. Hadley went exactly once, took a selfie holding Eleanor's hand, captioned it about strength, and was on her phone again before the elevator hit the lobby. My grandmother watched her leave and said nothing. She watched the hallway for 30 seconds after Hadley was gone. Then she turned back to me. On the 7th night, she pulled me close. Her voice was thin enough to slip under the door. "Sweetheart, your mother's hands are full of Hadley, so I'm leaving you my rings, the wedding set, the opal. Tell no one until you're old enough." She squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. She died 2 days later. I did not get to take the rings home. After the funeral, my mother stood in Eleanor's kitchen with the wooden jewelry box in her hands and announced, to the few aunts and cousins still picking at the casserole, that she would be holding my grandmother's jewelry for safekeeping until Hadley and I were old enough to decide. She said it like a kindness. She kept the box in the dresser of the master bedroom, behind a row of folded sweaters. Hadley was allowed in that bedroom whenever she wanted. I was not. 4 months later, in July of 2010, I started overhearing my sister on the phone with her boyfriend, Cole Pruitt. He was 17, drove a used Mustang, and had, my mother said proudly, real plans. The real plans involved a gym he wanted to open in Salem. Through the crack in Hadley's bedroom door, I heard her once. Don't worry, I have something. Trust me. Just give me until August. I did not know what something was. I would find out on the 6th. It was a Friday morning. I was eating cereal at the kitchen table when my mother screamed from upstairs in a voice that did not sound like hers. "My jewelry box! Where is it?" My father moved fast for a man with a bad lower back. His boots hit every other step on the way up. Hadley appeared in the kitchen doorway like she had been positioned there. Her face was the color my mother's face turned during arguments, which is to say, almost convincingly pale. She was wearing a tank top I had never seen before and lip gloss at 9 in the morning. "Mom's rings," my mother said when she came back down, holding the empty wooden box. Her hand was at her throat. "They're gone. $2,200 from the drawer is gone." The drawer was the second one in the dresser. The drawer she counted every Sunday night because my father kept all his cash there from clients who paid him for plumbing work outside the books. Hadley turned to me, slowly, the way actors turn when they want to make sure the audience sees the turn. "Mom," she said. Her voice cracked on the word. "Norma was up there yesterday. I saw her." I had not been upstairs the day before. I had been at tutoring with Mrs. Halverson until 6, and then I had walked over to the Cumberland Farms with 2 friends, Hannah and Bethany Pierce, for slushies. There were 3 other kids in tutoring. My name was on the sign-in sheet. The Cumberland Farms had cameras at every register. No one asked. Hadley led my parents down to the basement, to my half of the storage room, to my desk. My desk was a piece of plywood across 2 filing cabinets. She picked up my journal. The journal was a green spiral-bound notebook from CVS. She flipped to page 38. The top half of the page had been torn away. On what remained, in handwriting that looked almost exactly like mine, were 2 sentences I had never written. I took them. I had to. My father's voice was not loud. That was what made it terrible. "Norma, look at me. Did you write this?" I looked at the page. The way the T was crossed was wrong. The way the loop on the lowercase e sat below the line was wrong. I knew it. I was 13. I could not explain it. That's not my... I did not finish the sentence. I did not get to. My father walked back upstairs without speaking and pulled my school jacket off the hook by the front door. Navy blue, the one I wore on cold mornings to the bus stop. He shoved his hand into the inside pocket. His face changed before he pulled his hand out. He pulled out 2 opal earrings. I had not put them there. I knew I had not put them there. I also knew, in that exact second, that 2 days earlier Hadley had asked to borrow my school jacket. She had said it was for a Halloween costume idea, in July. I had not asked questions because I never asked Hadley questions. The cost was always too high. "You hid them in your school jacket," my father said. It was not a question. He picked up the kitchen phone. He called Tessa Halloran from down the street. Tessa was 14, my sister's best friend, and the person Hadley spent the most time with that summer. Tessa came over barefoot, in cut-off shorts, a single braid resting on her right shoulder. She did not look at me when she came through the screen door. I saw Norma sneaking up the stairs Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Dyson, around 3. I thought it was weird. I didn't want to say anything, but if it helps. I had not been there at 3 on Wednesday. There was no version of that sentence that was true. My mother started to cry, quietly, into the dish towel she had picked up at some point during the morning. Tessa walked back across our front lawn with her braid bouncing against her t-shirt. The verdict came in the living room. My mother sat on the sofa and did not lift her eyes. Hadley stood behind her with one hand on her shoulder, the picture of a steady older daughter holding her mother through a hard day. My father stood in the middle of the rug with his keys in his hand, the way men stand when they intend to leave. "Norma, you're not staying in this house tonight. We can't trust you. I'll figure something out tomorrow. Go pack a bag." The clock on the wall said 11:12. I went to the basement. I packed a duffel, 2 t-shirts, a pair of jeans, my grandmother's blue sketchbook, $8 I had been saving in a sock at the back of my drawer for a set of charcoal pencils I had wanted from Michael's. When I came back upstairs, my father was waiting at the front door. My mother had not moved from the sofa. Hadley had moved to the window, where she was now adjusting the curtain so she would have a clear view. He opened the door. The August air was warm and damp. I stepped out onto the porch. I heard the bolt slide behind me. There is a particular kind of silence you only hear once in your life. The silence of a door you grew up behind, locking against you. I sat down on the top step. I did not cry. I think part of me was waiting for someone to come open the door and say we figured it out. Come in. No one came. The streetlight on the corner buzzed. A car went by. A dog barked twice and stopped. The minutes turned. My duffel sat on my knees. At 1:54 in the morning, an old powder blue Buick LeSabre pulled into the driveway. The headlights washed across me and dimmed. Joanne was wearing a flannel shirt and slippers. Her hair was in a hasty bun. She did not get out. She rolled down the window. "Get in," she said. I made up the back room. I picked up my duffel. I learned years later what had happened. My father had not called Joanne to ask for help. He had called her at 11:30 to inform her, the way you inform an insurance company. She's not my problem anymore. Joanne did not argue with him. She hung up the phone. She put on her shoes. She drove the entire 43 miles at 20 over the limit. She told me later, on the drive back to Portsmouth, that the only thing she said to herself the whole way was just get there. Just get there. Marston's Bakery sat at 14 Daniel Street, in a red brick building from 1923, 3 blocks from the Portsmouth waterfront. The bakery occupied the ground floor. Joanne lived above it, in a 2-bedroom apartment with creaky pine floors and a window in the spare room that looked out over Memorial Bridge. The bridge was lit at night with 2 small white lamps and 1 orange one that flickered when it was windy. That window became mine that night. She showed me where the bathroom was. She pointed at the tub and said the shower worked hot, but the pipes were loud before 7. She told me there was leftover meatloaf in the fridge if I wanted it. She did not ask me what had happened. She did not ask me if I was hungry. She just laid out the rules of the apartment, item by item, the way you orient a new employee. I think she knew, intuitively, that the kindest thing she could do for me that night was treat me like I belonged there already. I did not eat the meatloaf. I sat on the bed in the dark and looked at the lights of Memorial Bridge. At 4:30 the next morning she knocked once. Up. Bakery opens at 6. I went down the back stairs in the same clothes I had arrived in. The kitchen smelled like yeast and warm flour and coffee that had been on the burner too long. Joanne handed me a clean apron. She tied it for me without looking at my face. "Hands washed," she said. "Then over here. You're going to learn how to fold dough. Not because you have to, because it's morning and we're awake, and we have hands." She passed me a glass jar. Inside was a thick, bubbling beige slurry with a hand-lettered label on a strip of masking tape. Margie. Established 1986. "My husband fed her every day for 21 years, Joanne said. "I've fed her every day since he passed in 2007. Now you'll feed her too." I put my hands into the bowl of flour and water she set in front of me. I cried into the dough. It was not because I was sad. I was sad. But that was not why. It was because, for the first time in 13 years, someone was teaching me something in a calm voice, with no edge in it, and no audience watching to see if I would mess it up. She did not ask me what happened for 11 days. On the 9th day, while she was knitting and I was reading a copy of American Primitive she had pulled off her shelf, she said, without looking up from her needles, "You don't have to tell me anything ever, sweetheart, but if you do, I'll listen until you finish. And after that, we'll see." On the 11th day, I told her. The diary, the earrings, Tessa, the locked door. I told her in fragments at the kitchen table while she peeled an apple in one continuous strip with a paring knife. She did not interrupt. She did not ask follow-up questions. When I was done, she set the apple down on the cutting board, put the knife in the sink, and walked into her bedroom. She came back with a brown manila envelope, about an inch thick. No label, the corner slightly bent. She set it on the kitchen table in the space between us. "I'm not opening this," she said. "You're not opening this. We're putting it in the safe downstairs. When you're old enough to decide what you want from this story, you'll know what to do with it. Until then, it stays sealed. Promise me." I promised. I did not know what was inside. She did not tell me. That fall, Joanne hired a lawyer named Linda Ostrander, a probate attorney, with an office above a dry cleaner on Pleasant Street, to file for legal guardianship through Rockingham County Probate Court. My father did not hire counsel, he just signed. Linda closed the file in November and slid the paperwork across her desk to Joanne. "Your brother didn't even hire counsel," she said. "He just signed. That's not common." I read the paper. I understood. My father had not just thrown me out, he had given me up. There had been a procedural moment sometime in October when he could have stood up and said, "That's my daughter. Give her back." And instead he had taken a pen out of his pocket and signed. I did not cry. I went downstairs and helped Joanne shape the next batch of brioche. That December, my parents did not call. Hadley did not call. Joanne did not comment on it. She roasted a small prime rib for the two of us, set the kitchen table with cloth napkins, and pulled out an old leather album of Eleanor's photographs. There she was, my grandmother, 19 years old, standing on a beach in Hampton in 1952, holding a paper cup of clam broth, squinting against the sun. Joanne raised her glass of water. "To the women who keep starters alive. Margie since 86. Mama since 52. You since now." I clinked her glass. That night, I slept with my grandmother's blue sketchbook under my pillow. For the first time, I felt something that was almost the shape of belonging. I also slept with the hallway light on for one more year. I graduated from Portsmouth High in 2015. Joanne paid for 2 years of pastry program at Great Bay Community College out of a savings account she had opened the day she became my guardian. I worked the bakery before and after class. I learned to scale, to mix, to laminate, to retard, to score. My laminating instructor in the second semester pulled me aside one morning during a brunch service in the campus restaurant. "Norma, your croissant lamination is professional grade. Where did you learn that?" "My aunt," I said. I graduated in May of 2016. I framed the diploma and put it on the wall of the bakery, where it still hangs above the espresso machine. My parents were not invited. I had written their names on a guest list the night before, and crossed both out with a single straight line. By 2018, Joanne had handed me the keys to manage the floor while she stepped back to baking. She kept the recipes in a black 3-ring binder she would not let leave the building. I kept the schedule, the inventory, and the staff. The regulars stopped asking which one of us they were ordering from. In the spring of 2022, Joanne had what the doctors at Portsmouth Regional called a minor stroke. She was 60. She was kneading a poolish at the bench when her right hand stopped working. The hospital kept her for 4 nights. They ran tests. They cleared 1 carotid. They told her gently that her career as a baker on her feet for 9 hours a day was over. When she came home, her right hand was slower than her left, and her speech slurred only on certain consonants when she was tired. She called Linda Ostrander the second week she was home. "Norma," she said, sitting at the kitchen table while I made tea. "The bakery is going to be yours, not when I die. Now. While I can still teach you the parts I haven't taught yet." The transfer was filed in June of 2022. The bakery had been valued at $238,000 by an independent assessor. She sold it to me for $1. Linda made me sign a separate document acknowledging that I understood what she was giving up. I went up to my old spare room that night, opened the closet, looked at the safe in the floor under the carpet, and put my hand on the door of it. I did not open the envelope. I just touched it. In 2023, I opened a second location in Newburyport, Massachusetts, in a former record store on State Street. The lease was a stretch. The first 3 months, I paid the rent out of my personal savings. By the 9th month, it was paying for itself. By the 18th, it was profitable enough that I could repay myself. In 2024, I started a program I called Second Rise. In bread, the second rise is what gives the loaf its structure. Without it, you have flour and water. With it, you have something that holds. Second Rise hired and trained women between 18 and 25 who had aged out of foster care or been pushed out of their childhood homes. We started with one. By the end of 2024, we had 18. One of them was Lacey Bowen. She was 21 when she walked into the Daniel Street Bakery on a January morning in a coat too thin for the wind off the harbor. She did not talk for the first 3 weeks. She just learned. By the end of her first year, she could laminate a croissant in her sleep, and she could spot a curdled hollandaise from across a kitchen. She was the only person I had ever told about Hadley. In a small newspaper feature published in Seacoast Online in August of 2024, I told the local reporter what Second Rise meant. She quoted me at the end of the piece, under a photograph of me and 4 employees on the back step of the Daniel Street kitchen. Without the second rise, you have flour and water. With it, you have something that holds. I did not say it for Hadley. I did not say it for my parents. I said it because I believed it. In September of 2025, Joanne handed me the keys to the apartment above the bakery. She had moved into a smaller place across the river in Kittery to be closer to her cardiologist, a man named Dr. Peterson who, she told me, had a much better waiting room than her old internist. "The envelope is in the safe," she said, putting the keys in my palm and curling my fingers around them. "I'm not going anywhere yet, but you should know where it lives." It was the closest thing to a goodbye I had ever heard from her. 6 weeks later, my phone rang while I was scaling pre-ferment at the Daniel Street bench for the next morning's sourdough. The screen said, "Mom." I had not seen that word on a screen in 15 years. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. I scaled the rest of the pre-ferment. I moved on to the autolyse. I kneaded for 10 minutes. Then I washed my hands, sat on the back step, and listened. 92 seconds. Her voice was thinner than I remembered. The southern lilt that used to surface around her sister had been worn smooth by years of New Hampshire winters and small disappointments. "Norma, it's Mom. We need to talk. Family things. Your father, he's been hurt. There's other things. I know it's been a long time. I know it has. Please call me. Please, sweetheart. Family is family." She said family is family 4 times in 92 seconds. I counted the second time I listened. I did not call back for 3 days. When I finally did, I said one sentence. "The Lighthouse Diner, Route 1, Tuesday at 3. Come alone." She said yes immediately. She had been waiting. The Lighthouse Diner has booths upholstered in red vinyl with cracks taped over in black duct tape and coffee that is reliably terrible. I chose it because no one I knew would be there at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and because the booths had high backs that meant nobody at the counter would hear us. She came alone. She was older than I remembered. Her hair was a dark, uneven dye job, with gray roots she had started to hide and then given up on. She had on the cream cardigan, pilled at the elbows. The same one. I knew the second I saw it. She slid into the booth across from me and folded her hands on the table the way she used to fold them in church. "You look," she said, considering me, "successful." I did not say thank you. I did not say anything. The waitress came. I ordered a coffee. My mother ordered nothing. She did not ask me how I was. She did not ask about Joanne. She did not mention the year I turned 13. She slid a folded sheet of yellow legal paper across the table. Your father fell off scaffolding 3 months ago. His back is bad. He can't work. He has to refund $190,000 to 3 customers because he couldn't finish the jobs. His license is suspended. We have your sister and Cole at the house. Their gym went bankrupt last year. The IRS is after them. The credit cards, Norma. We are losing the house. Your sister is losing her mind. We need $500,000 by Christmas. She did not say please. I looked at the paper. The handwriting was hers. Tight, slanted, small. I looked back at her. In 12 minutes, my mother used the word family 17 times. I counted in my head, and I wrote a tally in the back of the paper chamber program I was carrying in my coat pocket, because I had not yet decided how I would tell Joanne about this conversation. Mom, I said when she finally paused, where was family on August 6, 2010? For 4 seconds, she did not answer. Then she did the thing she had always done. She slid sideways. That was a long time ago, Norma. Your father never meant... What did he mean? He was angry. He was... Norma. He was a young father. He didn't know how to handle a daughter who... A daughter who what? She pressed her lips together. She did not finish the sentence. She opened her purse instead. She took out a small white envelope, and from inside it, a Polaroid. It was a photograph of my grandmother holding me as a newborn. Eleanor's hair was dark in the photo. Her smile was soft. She was looking down at the baby in her arms, not at the camera. I had never seen the picture before, in any album, anywhere. My mother turned it over. On the back, in Eleanor's handwriting, in the same blue ink she always used, were 6 words. For the day, she'll be ready. Mom gave me this when you were 3 days old, my mother said. She told me to keep it for when you needed it. I think today is that day. She slid it across the table. I did not pick it up immediately. I looked at it. I looked at her. I looked at the Polaroid, then at her again. She had kept that photograph for 28 years. She had not kept it because she loved me. She had kept it because, on some level, she had always known one day she would need to weaponize it. I picked it up. I put it in the inside pocket of my coat. I stood up. I left a 20 on the table for the coffee I had not finished. I did not say anything else. I drove straight to Daniel Street. I unlocked the bakery, walked through the dim front room, climbed the stairs to the apartment, opened the closet of my old spare room, lifted the carpet, and turned the dial of the safe. The brown envelope was at the bottom, exactly where Joanne had placed it on a fall night in 2010 while I sat at the kitchen table with apple peel in front of me. I sat on the floor. I broke the seal. Inside the envelope were 3 things. The first was a VHS tape in a plain black sleeve with a piece of masking tape across the spine. The label was in Joanne's blocky handwriting. Garage Cam, June to August 2010. The second was a yellowed slip of paper folded once, a pawn ticket. Coastal Pawn, Portsmouth, NH, number 88112. Date, August 4th, 2010. Item, 1 wedding ring, gold band, 1 opal engagement ring. Customer, Hadley Dyson. Cash paid, $1,850. The third was a bank statement, 3 pages, with 1 line circled in red pen. The account belonged to my sister, at a credit union she had used until college. The line read, Wire transfer outgoing, $2,200, to Cole Pruitt. Date, August 5th, 2010. A day before my mother claimed the money was missing. My aunt had been holding the spine of this story since I was 13. She had just never told me which bones. I sat on the floor for a long time, looking at the 3 pieces of paper laid out on the carpet in front of me. I did not cry. I had stopped crying about this when I was 18. The next morning, I drove to a small storefront on Congress Street that converted old media. The sign in the window said any format to any format. The owner was a man named Hank, who was 64 and wore reading glasses around his neck on a chain. He looked at the spine of the tape, then up at me. His face changed in a small, careful way. "Your aunt brought this in for me to convert in 2015, he said. "I remember it. Cash. She asked me to forget. And I never forget anything," he said, "but for her, I forgot." I paid him $80. I took the DVD home. I closed the door of my office at the Daniel Street Bakery, put the disc in my laptop, and pressed play. The tape was silent. The angle was wide. Eleanor had installed a small camera in her own garage in 2009 because someone had been trying car door handles in her neighborhood. The camera ran on a continuous loop, recording over itself every 30 days. Joanne had pulled this tape from the machine the week of the funeral and kept it in a drawer. She had transferred the footage to a fresh tape the same week, just in case. The timestamp ran in the lower left corner. August 4th, 2010, 2:47 p.m. Hadley walked through the side door of the garage in cut-off shorts and a tank top, a small backpack on her shoulder. She crossed into the house through the kitchen door. 4 minutes later, she came back out. The backpack was bulging. She got into the passenger seat of Cole's Mustang. The car backed out of the driveway. August 5th, 2010, 11:14 a.m. Hadley returned. She walked from the driveway to the kitchen door carrying a folded slip of paper. A wire transfer receipt. August 5th, 2010, 8:02 p.m. Hadley met Cole on the side of the garage. She passed him something small. He nodded once. I scrubbed back through the tape for July and August. There was no frame in the entire 2 months that contained me. 15 years of being asked to apologize for something I never did. 23 minutes of footage to prove it. I closed the laptop. I drove to Coastal Pawn. The owner was a man named Howard Pence. He was 65. He had been working pawn counters since he was 18. He looked at the ticket I slid across his counter and tapped his finger against it once. "I'd remember that day," he said. "Girl was nervous as hell, tried to bargain me up. I gave her $18.50. She took it cash. 16-year permit ID. I made a copy of the ID at the time. I keep copies of every single transaction in a paper book. People come back. Sometimes they shouldn't. Would you make a statement?" I asked. He looked at me a long moment, took off his reading glasses, set them on the counter. "I've waited 15 years for someone to ask," he said. "Pawn shop owners, remember. We just don't volunteer." That night, I found Tessa Halloran on Facebook. She was 29, divorced, with a 4-year-old daughter, working as a receptionist at a dental office in Dover. I sent her a single message. "Tessa, this is Norma. Coffee?" She replied in 11 minutes. "Can we meet?" We met at a Dunkin' on Route 16 the next afternoon. Her hands shook around her cup. She did not cry, but she did not look up much. Her daughter was at preschool. Tessa had 30 minutes. "Hadley paid me $40, she said. "I was 14. I was broke. I was a coward. I have what she texted me telling me what to say. I kept it. I kept all of it. I have the phone in a shoebox in my closet." She looked up. "I've waited 15 years for you to knock," she said. "I am so sorry. I did not forgive her. I did not need to. I told her if I needed her to be in a particular building on a particular night, would she come?" "Anywhere," she said. "Just tell me when." I told her when. The night before the gala, I sat at the kitchen table of Joanne's old apartment with the VHS, the converted DVD, The pawn ticket, Tessa's old text screenshots, the bank statement, and the speech I had drafted 3 different ways, each one shorter than the last. Joanne sat across from me. She poured tea. "Sweetheart," she said, "you don't have to use any of this. You can give the speech, take the award, go home, and bury this for another 15 years if you want. The proof works the same in a drawer as it does on a screen." I looked at the DVD on the table. "What if I want them to see it?" I said. "Not to hurt them, just so they can't say it didn't happen." She thought about that for a long beat. "Then we'll bring the DVD." She tucked it into the inside pocket of the black blazer she had bought at the thrift store on Islington. I asked her if she was sure she wanted to wear that blazer. "It cost $6, she said. "It's perfect. Before I walk you into that ballroom, let me ask you something. If your mother walked across a room and asked you for $500,000 in the name of family, would you write the check? Or would you ask for the receipt? Tell me in the comments. I'll read them." The Chamber Gala fell on November 13th, 2025. The event began at 6. Cocktails until 7. Sit-down dinner of pan-seared chicken or vegetable risotto. Awards starting at 7:30. At 7:32, the MC, a chamber board member named Daphne Holloway, took the podium and welcomed Lacey Bowen up first. The chamber required a tribute speech, 90 seconds, from one employee of each honored business. I had asked Lacey 3 weeks earlier if she would do it. She had cried before she said yes. She walked up in a navy dress and stood at the podium with her hands flat on the wooden lip. Her voice trembled at first. "2 years ago," she began, "I aged out of foster care with a duffel bag and $0. Norma Dyson hired me without asking what I came from. She taught me how to laminate a croissant. Then she taught me how to manage a kitchen. Then she taught me that being chosen doesn't always come from the people who made you. It comes from the people who open a door." A small ripple of applause. Several women at the front tables wiped their eyes. I did not look at table 9. I felt it. At 7:38, Daphne introduced me. I climbed 3 steps to the stage. I did not bring my notes. I left them on my chair, folded once, ending number 2 on top. I looked out across the room. I found Joanne at table 1. She was looking back at me steadily, the way she had looked at me at 4:30 in the morning the first day I learned to fold a brioche. I began. "My name is Norma Dyson. Some of you know I run a bakery. Fewer of you know I've run it for 3 years. None of you know I started learning how to make bread the morning after my father locked me out of his house. I was 13. The room went still. I let it. Spencer Granger, at table 14, lifted his glass slightly. He did not drink. He waited. I've spent 15 years not telling this story. Tonight, someone in this room asked me for $500,000 in the name of family. I took that as a sign that maybe family is a word that needs auditing every now and then. In the aisle between table 8 and table 9, my mother stood up. 312 heads turned. She took 2 steps toward the stage. She did not get further. A chamber security staffer, a tall man in a Sheraton uniform, stepped politely into her path with a hand half raised. She stopped. The room held its breath. I could hear a fork clink down on a plate at the back. I leaned toward the microphone. "Mom, I need you to sit down. You've already said what you came to say. Now I get my turn." For a moment, she did not move. She had not been told no in front of an audience in many years. She did not have a script for it. She turned very slowly and lowered herself into the nearest empty chair, which was not her own. Her back was straight. Her hands were folded in her lap. The cardigan looked smaller on her than it had in 2010. I turned to the side of the stage. "Aunt Joanne," I said. "Would you come up?" Joanne stood and walked across the floor. She did not hurry. She climbed the 3 steps with one hand on the rail. She came to the podium and pulled the DVD out of the inside pocket of her thrift store blazer. She handed it to Daphne, who handed it, without flinching, to the AV manager waiting in the wings. She turned to the room and steadied herself with one hand on the lectern. "I held a videotape for 15 years, she said. Her voice did not waver. "My niece deserves the right to choose what people remember about her. Tonight, she chose." The lights dimmed. The screen behind the podium glowed. The chamber logo faded out. Black. 23 seconds. There was no sound. The footage was old. The angle was the corner of a residential garage in Manchester, New Hampshire. The timestamp ran in the lower left corner. August 4th, 2010, 2:47 p.m. A teenage girl walked through a side door with a small backpack. 4 minutes later, she walked out, the backpack now full. She climbed into a Mustang. The car backed away. The garage door closed behind her. 300 guests watched. Someone at table 9 inhaled sharply enough to be heard 6 tables away. When the screen cut to black, I stepped back to the microphone. "That was August 4th, 2010, I said. 2 days before my parents accused me of stealing my grandmother's wedding rings and $2,200 in cash. I was at tutoring. There were 3 other students in the room. There is a sign-in sheet. Their names were Hannah Pierce, Bethany Pierce, and a boy named Jackson Cady. I have copies of the sheet at home." The next slide came up. A scanned pawn ticket. Coastal Pawn. Number 88112. August 4th, 2010. 1 wedding ring, gold band. 1 opal engagement ring. Cash paid, $1,850. Customer signature, Hadley Dyson. I did not need to point at it. The signature was visible from the back of the room. "My grandmother left me her rings," I said. "She told me 2 days before she died in a hospital bed at Catholic Medical Center. I never got to hold them. My sister sold them on the same afternoon she planted earrings in my school jacket." At table 9, my sister stood. She did not get far. Her husband, Cole, who had not spoken to me in 15 years, reached up and pulled her firmly back into her chair by the elbow. He did not look at her. He understood, in a way she did not, that running from this room would be worse than sitting through it. My mother had bowed her head over the table. She was not looking up. The cardigan had slipped down on one shoulder. She was not crying. I do not believe she had the equipment for that anymore. I turned back to the room. I found my mother's downturned head in the lights. I leaned to the microphone one last time. "Mom, you came here tonight to ask me for $500,000 in the name of family. I want you to know 2 things. 1. You raised the daughter who locked me out, not the one who built her way back. 2. The only inheritance I owe this family is the truth, and tonight I just paid in full." I set the microphone gently down on the podium. I did not yell. I did not flinch. I did not look at the cameras. I looked at Joanne. She nodded once. Cameras flashed. The Globe photographer at the press table moved closer to the stage and took 8 shots in 3 seconds. The light bounced off the brass nameplate of the lectern and made me blink. The applause did not start all at once. Spencer Granger was the first man on his feet. Joanne went next, slow and steady on her right side. Lacey, stage left, was already crying, then table 14, then table 7, then table 3, then most of the room. Not everyone. Not 312. Maybe 180. It was enough. It was the people I would have wanted in the room anyway. My mother stood up from the chair that was not hers and walked slowly in the cream cardigan across the entire length of the ballroom toward the side exit. Her path took her past the press table. The Globe photographer turned. She did not stop. She did not lift her hand to shield her face. She just kept walking, because raising a hand would have admitted there was something to hide. Hadley followed her 90 seconds later at a quicker pace, head down, one hand at her hairline. Cole stayed in his chair, alone at table 9, looking at his hands. I walked off the stage. Daphne came forward, took the microphone, and announced into the standing room what I had already become. Small Business Owner of the Year. It was almost an afterthought. By 6 the next morning, the Boston Globe had picked up a lifestyle piece titled "At Portsmouth Award. A Baker Settles a 15-Year Lie." The reporter had been at the gala. She had not used Hadley's name. She had not needed to. She had used the words sister and sealed envelope and coastal pawn. The article was shared 3,800 times in 24 hours and reposted by 2 regional women in business accounts I had never followed. That morning at the Daniel Street Bakery, the line stretched out the door for the first time in 3 years. People came in who had never come in before. They bought sourdough, they bought croissants, they bought scones. Some of them shook my hand. One older woman bought a single morning bun and told me, very softly, that her son had not spoken to her in 12 years, and that she had read my story at 4 in the morning, and she had finally written him a letter she should have written a decade earlier. I told her thank you. I went into the back. I leaned against the walk-in cooler door. I let myself, for the first time in a long time, breathe. 11 days later, on November 25th, Cole Pruitt filed for divorce in Rockingham County Family Court. The grounds were irreconcilable differences. His attorney, off the record, told a regional reporter that his client wished to disassociate from any criminal investigation that may follow the events of November 13th. The Pruitts' bankrupt gym had been the surface story. The IRS letters had been the real one. Cole, who had spent 15 years married to Hadley, had been quietly building his own escape file since the spring. Hadley moved into my parents' guest bedroom. She did not have anywhere else to go. My father called me 7 times in the first 24 hours after the gala. I did not answer. He did not leave a voicemail. He started, in the second week, to write letters by hand. The first one arrived on November 22nd, in a USPS standard envelope with a stamp slightly askew. The handwriting was shaky from his back, and from something else I was not yet ready to name. Norma, I don't know how to ask for forgiveness for something I'm just now understanding. Your mother is sleeping in the spare room. Hadley left for Massachusetts. I owe everyone money I don't have. I'm not writing for help. I'm writing because I should have written 15 years ago. I read it once. I folded it. I put it in a locked box on the top shelf of my closet, in the same box that held the brown envelope. Some letters get answered. Some get archived. On November 28th, Spencer Granger called me at the bakery. He told me that his niece, Faith Granger, 19, had been working at the Newburyport location since June. He told me Faith had left her father's house after he had thrown her out for dating the wrong boy. He told me Faith had not told anyone in her family where she was working, but Spencer had figured it out, and he had paid attention. That's why I nominated you, he said. Faith doesn't know I told you. Don't tell her. I told him I would not. I hung up. I walked out into the kitchen of the Newburyport store, where Faith was scoring loaves at the bench in a white apron tied twice around her waist. I did not say a word. I just refilled her coffee. On December 3rd, I took a call from the Rockingham County District Attorney's Office. The original 2010 fraud was outside the statute of limitations. There was nothing the state could do about that, the assistant DA said, with real regret in her voice. But the gym fraud was not outside the statute. Cole and Hadley were under investigation for tax fraud and wire fraud connected to the bankruptcy. The DA wanted to ask me, very carefully, whether I would be willing to provide context, texts, statements, the diary page, about my sister's pattern of dishonest conduct, to establish credibility for the charges they were already building. I asked for a week to think about it. I called Joanne. You don't have to be the one who punishes them, sweetheart, she said. The world will do its work. I called the DA back at the end of the week. I told her I would provide a notarized statement and the diary page. I would not testify in person unless absolutely required. She thanked me. Most people aren't this restrained, she said. It helps. On December 14th, I sat at the kitchen table in my apartment above the bakery, with a piece of craft cardstock and a black ballpoint pen, and I drew a small loaf of sourdough on the front of a card. I wrote inside, Aunt Joanne, you held the spine of my story for 15 years, and never asked to be thanked. Thank you anyway. The bakery is yours. The bread is yours. I'm yours. Norma. I drove it to her apartment in Kittery and slid it under her door because I knew she would not have wanted to be seen receiving it. I drove home with the radio off. She read it sitting at her own kitchen table. I know because she called me that night from the cordless phone she still uses, and she told me. She did not say much else. She did not need to. 3 days later, on December 17th, I drove to a stationery store on Congress Street and bought a single sheet of heavy cotton paper. I sat at the bakery counter after closing, with the lights off and the espresso machine cooling, and I wrote a letter to my father. I wrote the entire thing in one draft. I did not cross anything out. Dad, I read your letter. I'm not going to forgive you in the way you might be hoping, but I'm not going to hate you either. I've decided to mail you a small monthly amount, $400, directly to the medical office handling your back until you're treated. It will not go through Mom. It will not go through Hadley. It will not go through anyone who can spend it on themselves. This is not love. This is not family. This is a closed account, paid out under specific terms, by a daughter who survived. Norma. I addressed the envelope to the Portsmouth Spine and Pain Clinic, attention to my father's case manager, with a note clipped to the top sheet asking that the funds be applied directly to his treatment balance and that the source remain undisclosed unless the patient asked. I used a P.O. box for my return address. He would never know which town the bakery was in. I dropped it in the outgoing slot at the post office on State Street. On December 19th, I drove the Daniel Street Bakery before sunrise. The streetlights were still on. The harbor was dark. The bricks of the building were dark and wet from a snow that had fallen in the night. Lacey had been promoted to pastry chef at the Newburyport location 2 weeks earlier. The kitchen at Daniel Street was mine to open alone. I unlocked the front door. I stepped inside. I switched on the warm front lights. On the inside of the front window, in white poster paint, in Lacey's handwriting, were 3 words she had painted there before she'd transferred. Second rise. All welcome. I started the ovens. I pulled the first pre-fermented dough from the cooler. I weighed flour for the morning's batard. I looked up. Across the street, in the orange light of the street lamp, a girl was standing on the curb. She was maybe 14. She was wearing a coat that was much too thin for December in Portsmouth. Her hands were jammed into the pockets. She was looking through the window. She was not moving. I knew that posture. I had stood in that posture on a different porch, 15 years and 4 months earlier. I walked to the door. I unlocked it. I pulled it open. The cold air came in. I did not call to her loudly. I just spoke across the street. Are you hungry? Come on in. We've got coffee, and I'll teach you how to fold dough if you want. She did not move for a long second. Then she crossed. She stepped up onto the curb. She stepped through the door. The bell above it jingled, the way it had jingled the morning I first walked into this kitchen at 4:30 in the morning, 13 years old with someone else's flour on my fingers. The door closed behind her. I poured her a cup of coffee. I did not ask her name. I did not ask her where she had come from. I gave her a clean apron. I tied it for her without looking at her face. Hands washed, I said. Then over here. She washed her hands. She came over. I put the bowl of dough between us. If anyone in your life has ever used the word family as a bill, leave one word in the comments. The word they used. Not their name. Not the story. Just the word. I want to read what we've all been asked to pay. My grandmother told me, the year I turned 10, that the world has rooms it doesn't know how to label. She was right. But she did not tell me the secret. Sometimes you build your own room. And sometimes you learn how to build it from a woman who owns a bakery and never asks why you are standing on her porch at 2 in the morning. My name is Norma Dyson. I am 28 years old. The night they locked me out, I thought I had lost my family. What I learned is this. You do not lose family. You just find out who it actually is. And sometimes, 15 years later, you become it for someone else. The bakery opens at 6. I have hands. I have flour. I have a girl I have never met before, washing her hands at my sink. That, I have decided, is more than enough.